we're happy to have with us Mr. Nicolas Berniart at the Radio Al Balad. Welcome to our radio station.
Thank you very much for having me.
Congratulations on winning the localization prize from the JONAV organization. We are members of JONAV, and we are very happy that you received that award. How did you receive that recognition?
Well, it took place yesterday, and I think it was a very a heartwarming moment for me, but for the team mostly, because of course this is an award for the entire team. To see the work we've been doing over the past few decades, really, because we've been present in Jordan for over 30 years. But to see that work, to try and really empower civil society, to ensure that they have a voice and a seat at the table, and to see that recognized, I think was wonderful. And to have so many of our friends and colleagues and partners from civil society that were there with us, I think, that meant a lot.
So do you feel that the localization is something that is going to continue, and how do you see the challenges of localization?
First, maybe just to explain to your audience what localization is, I think it's really important. In the olden days of development work, trying to help countries attain the Sustainable Development Goals, for instance, a lot of the work was being done top-down. UN agencies would come, or international NGOs would come, and really try and tell the government, or try to tell civil society, the population, what to do. And this was the case both in development spaces, but also in humanitarian work. And so, a few years ago, the international community just realized that this was not a normal way to act, that actually local population, local organizations have much better knowledge, of course, of their environments, of their circumstances, and must be at the heart of the response and driving that response. And basically, the type of work that you do with the community radio really is recognizing, really the contribution that communities make. So the word localization came out of there, saying we need to localize development efforts, we need to localize humanitarian efforts, and really empower those at the local level, so national forces, to lead those efforts. We've seen progress all around the world. Not enough always, but we do see change, and there's no going back. So if you ask me, it's going to continue. Here in Jordan, you have a very vibrant civil society community. There's a lot of organizations of very many different kinds. For us at UN Women, of course, we work very closely with women-led organizations or organizations that work on women's issues. I'm amazed, no matter where I go in the kingdom, the most remote areas of Badia, Mahan, or just all the way north, there's always numerous local grassroots organizations that are led by women that are working hard to support the community. So if you ask me, the environment is there. You have the resources in the country to continue localization. The development partners have understood that they need to work with civil society. But of course, the question is, where are the resources? And are the resources going to stay there?
Of course. In recent days, we concluded, all of us, 16 days campaign for violence against women and girls. How do you assess this campaign? Where are we in terms of fighting this terrible situation of women still suffering from violence?
Thank you. Well, so to me, the 16 days, it's my 15th year this year working for UN Women, and so marking the 16 days campaign. And every year, it's a time where both I'm really happy to see that we have an increasing number of stakeholders, different actors of society, not just civil society organization, not just government, but also, for instance, private sector, that are really getting engaged in the campaign and saying, we must put an end to violence. But the reality is that at the same time, for me, it's one of the most depressing times of the year. Because year after year now, for 15 years, I've had to have the same messages. Because the reality is globally, violence against women is not decreasing. So 15 years ago, I would have told you, about 30%, one-third, a little over 30%, one-third of women globally will face violence in their lifetime. We have about, 8.2 billion people on the planet? 8.1? I mean, that's 2.7 billion women victim of violence, right? We also have a new study at UN Women that we released with the UN Organization of Drug and Crime that showcases that a woman or a girl is killed by an intimate partner or family member every 10 minutes.
Wow.
So, by the time this
And
interview
in
is
Jordan,
over,
what's our situation in Jordan?
So we don't have data on femicide in Jordan, and we have light data on the prevalence of violence against women. And so there's a study, a health study from 2018 that showcases about 29%. So it's a little bit under the global average, but 29% of
Still
partner
high.
women, not all women, so women between 18 and 55, who will face violence in their lifetime. So it's too high. And actually, Jordan has done a very interesting study a couple of years ago, supported by the UN, on the cost of domestic violence. And it shows that it costs to the economy, on average, $130 million a year. Sorry, Jordanian dinars, not dollars. 130 million Jordanian dinars a year. And that's 0.4% of the GDP. So that's a very big cost.
So Jordanian women do very well in education. They do very well in higher education. But we have one of the lowest rates of women working in Jordan. And we've not been able to, pinpoint the exact reason and address that issue. How do you feel about this gender issue, gender index on work?
So this is one of the most confounding, I think, issue we have, not just in Jordan, to be honest, in the region, right? Where the average for the region for women's labor force participation is 18%. And Jordan is flatlining at 14.5%. And that's a huge contrast with the fact that actually you have some of the highest rates of education of women. So if you think about the investments that you do in women's education and then the fact that they don't work, it's a huge loss for the economy. It's a huge loss for the economy of the country and, of course, for the economy of families, right? Which is what really matters at a community level. There's many, many reasons behind that. So we also already know it's not education. People put forward reasons such as the difficulty to find transportation. But I'll be honest, if you're in Amman, where a vast part of the population lives, that's not the case. If you live in remote areas, for sure that's an issue. We talk about daycare and childcare issues. Sure, that can be an issue, and I think it is an important issue that the government is really focusing on. But at the same time, there are family networks that can help with childcare. One big issue, to be honest, is just there's not enough jobs, right? So, and this is one of the reasons why
the families prefer to give their son the job rather than their daughter, or
there is that.
The husband rather than a wife.
There is that traditionally, but an increasing number of... So what's fantastic is that we have studies that really show that actually the population of Jordan supports the idea of women working. Now, of course, if they have to choose, they will mostly choose men. But they do support the idea of women working, and we really see at the grassroots level with, with poverty and the difficulties that families face, all of them are open to having a second salary and really actually need it. But there's, as I said, there's not that many jobs. So that's why we work, for instance, very closely with the private sector and the government to try and attract investment to grow the economy in sectors that can provide jobs to women. And I think also there's one discussion we must have, which is complex, but it's the overall Jordanian population relationship to work. In many of my interactions, when I go around the country, I hear that women want to work, but at the same time, they don't especially want to do anything, or their family doesn't want them to do just anything. Right? So they prefer work in the public sector. They sometimes want to work in the private sector if it's really safe.
They want to be teachers, all of them.
They can stop working at 3, right? And I'm told, of course, that no, if it's a job that pays minimum wage, and that's a factory job, they won't take it. There's a paradox in Jordan. There's hundreds of thousands of foreign workers working in factories. And I know nobody wants to work for minimum wage, but in most of the rest of the world, this is how we achieved high employment, just not of women, but of men too. So I think we also need to have a national conversation about the value of work and how, of course, we increase the standards and improve the standards in factories, in the industrial sector, in manufacturing sector, how we improve and increase minimum wage, but the overall value of work. But I think, if you think 85% of working age women are not working, can you imagine the contribution to the economy, to the Jordanian economy, that could be happening if these women work?
we have noticed that older women have a lot more involvement in community action and community work, while younger women seem to be avoiding engagement in community work. Do you see that pattern? And how can, if that's true, how can we reverse that?
I see it and I don't see it. And I'm saying this because it's true that when I go around the country or when I meet here in Amman and we have convenings of community organizations, there's a lot of older women. It's true. And they carry a lot of knowledge and a lot of experience on their shoulders. But at the same time, Jordan is a country that has a huge amount of the youth that does volunteerism.
True.
So I think we have to reconcile where do the young women do their volunteerism with community work. I think volunteerism happens a lot more in the big cities. In Amman here, in Irbid, in Madaba, maybe in Aqaba. Whereas at the community level, they're less there. But they are active, and young women are very active. So I think we have to think, youth doesn't think like the two of us. They're completely different.
We need to provide new opportunities in different ways other than fighting illiteracy or, empowerment. I think they need things that they can be challenged with.
Like a lot of youth I work with, and I say, we want to engage you, but do you have an organization? How are you organized? How can we support you? Can we support your project financially? They're like, no, we don't organize ourselves. We're young. We work through social media. We work through the internet. We're agile. We don't want to have the structures that you used to have. In the old days, we're different. So I think we have to learn actually how to work with them.
To adapt
exactly.
The fact that many work on their own or in small groups rather than in non-profit charities and so on. So the whole charity organizational structure needs to be reviewed.
I think, we still need the old ones, but we need to also review it. We need to, and it's a problem for the UN. Sometimes we don't know how to engage with these new sort of systems, if that makes sense.
So we're coming to the end of 2025. What are the top 3 challenges that you and women are putting for 2026?
So, I think one for sure for us will be to continue working on the economy. This is for us a huge priority. I think it's a top priority. If you ask what is going to really advance the situation of women and girls in Jordan, it's economic empowerment. So we have been working a lot in this space, but we're about to launch a new broad program to really try and surge women's employment by 5% by 2030 in support of the effort of the government, because under His Majesty King Abdullah II's economic modernization vision, there's really a focus on doubling women's labor force participation. So we want to do our contribution to that. So this is going to be a top priority for us. The second priority is going to continue working on women's political participation. We're very proud of the partnership we've had with the government, with the Independent Election Commission, in the lead up to the elections of parliamentary elections of 2024. And we've seen fantastic results. Increasing women's participation in parliament from 14 to 20% is a historic high. We now have the new local administration law that's being discussed, and we will have, local elections. And I know that there's a proposal on the table, which we hope will be approved, to have at least a minimum quota of 30%. For women's representation in the local administration law. So this is going to be a big priority because leadership at the local level is often where you're able to influence and most impact, the local population, the community. So, from your perspective, a community radio, I think really local elections, I encourage people to think in advance and how can they support their local women candidates. I think these are going to be the two top priorities for us.
Now, you've talked a lot about the reason for not enough women are working, and it's clear that part of it is a cultural issue, an awareness issue. So do you have, or are you interested in doing more with media, social media, with community media, in terms of having these messages double, tripled, the double effect of media where we can change people's attitudes?
Completely. Yesterday evening we had our annual sort of gathering of our private sector partner. We work with 250 private sector companies here that represent over 100,000 employees. And the key central theme of the discussion we had last night was about what we call gender responsive marketing. How do you use your marketing practices to actually showcase a variety of situations in which women are engaged in life. So not just women doing the dishes, or cooking. We actually also know that men can do the same thing. They need to be showcased, but also showing women professionally. Too often the depictions of women are only in domestic areas, and that sends an image to people to women and girls that's what their future is. If women can see themselves as being really active, as being professional, as being leaders, will inspire more women and girls. So this is something we definitely want to do, and you need multiple medium. We need big companies, marketing, to change their attitude. Recently, I'm not going to do a commercial for one brand, but a big telecommunication brand had a massive poster close to Abdali, huge, several story high, of a woman military uniform, and it was advertisement for phones, showing that image of a strong woman in the military as part of the advertising campaign, having thousands and thousands of Jordanians, Ammonites seeing that every day. That helps shape opinions. But we also need to work with community radios and the likes of you to really, I think, change the message and pass the message that we need strong families, for strong communities. We basically need both men and women, husband and wives, to be working and to bring an income to the table.
We've been watching and following a lot of studies around the world, and we noticed that on media, whether radio, television, newspapers, men and women share the hosting of programs, but guests
Exactly.
are 80% men.
Yes.
And we've been trying to train women to know how, because women have a lot to say, but some of them have that problem of breaking the ice, breaking that barrier of getting on radio because they're like afraid. We need to do more to get women as guests, as experts, not just as interviewers, but also as guests.
I mean, I couldn't agree more, and I feel guilty now because I'm here. I'm talking about women's issues, and I'm a man, right? But this is a phenomenon we see everywhere. I mean, even in movies, you see that women have a lot less speaking roles than men, right? There's lots of women experts there. If you talk to a women politician here in Jordan, they're nearly never invited on talk shows, etc. It's always the men that are invited. Part of it is just because that's what newscasters think of, clearly not you. And part of it, as you said, is because women, I think, haven't been given the tools and used to do it. And we just need to engage them. I mean, I haven't been trained to do this. I think it's just creating a conversation and being able to trust on their expertise. And I think the moment you trust their expertise and you showcase that, when you invite them, they'll shine.
Mr. Nicolas Berniart, the representative of UN Women in Jordan, thank you so much for being our guest, and hopefully we will have many more visits and engagements with the UN Women in Jordan.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and I'd love to be back.